Welcome, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. It's Shabbat. We're on Torah portion, Vayat Khanan. In Yiddish, or the Chabad would say, Vaetcanan. The tav without a dot is a sav. Whenever it has a dot, it becomes tav. So it's a harder or a softer way of saying it, Vayat Khanan. We're going to talk about the whole commandment. Also have a written Torah portion. Probably won't touch on that one. This is a video of what I've been studying this morning and last night during our Shabbat meal. We were talking about the Torah portion, and God inspired me to talk about 613 commandments. That throughout Jewish tradition is the number known for how many commandments are in the Torah. I've not actually sat down, but there's probably a lot of meaning behind that number. Is there exactly 613 mitzvot that's in the Torah portion? Well, there's been 613 that have been discerned, but that number also points to something to help us gain a deeper understanding of how important the commandments are to a person who serves God, who follows Yeshua and Torah. So I'm going to be sharing a lot of traditional things that I've studied a little bit. Not that I've took a deep dive into these sources. I'm very aware of those sources. I have a few of those sources myself. But I always think it's fascinating that when you can be studying the Torah portion and you just get this shot of wisdom, they call it chokhmah, and it's just there for a moment and it just goes away. But then the next step is to contemplate on that, to think about what that shot of wisdom is. And every time that I personally read the Torah portion, I always get this one thing in my mind that stands out, and I usually chase that, contemplate on that, begin to write about it, think about it deeply. Sometimes you can't even put it in the words. It's just for that internal moment. And I think all of us, who follow Yeshua, who study the Torah, are looking for those eye-opening, heartfelt moments when we study the Torah. And that's been what my desire is. Father, open my eyes to see the wonderful things in your Torah. If the Torah is got wonderful things in it, Father, then let me see it. And Father, I just pray at this moment that open our eyes to the wonderful things that are in your Torah. Father, you compare the sun, the Torah, to the sun, that it provides light and warmth, gives life to us, but also Torah is the restorer of the soul. Father, help us to find that place where we need restoration, individually, corporately. Restore our minds and our hearts to your understanding. Your ways are not our ways, but Father, help us to cling to you and hope for that understanding, that true love, that we should be doing all things that we do should be done in love. Father, we thank you. We love you. Thank you for the Torah you gave on Mount Sinai to Moshe. Open our eyes, Father, in Yeshua's name. The whole commandment, the 613, we're going to talk about the Shema and the body made for the mitzvot, the commandments. This is Torah portion, Vaetchanan, reading from Deuteronomy chapter 3, verses 23 through chapters 7 through 11. The Hebrew word patika, a man who pleaded. So the portion opens with Moshe on the far side of the Yarden pleading. Vaetcanan, and I pleaded, said Moshe. This is a word of the whole body bent low. Vaetcanan. He wants to cross over. He wants to walk the land in his own feet, to do the commandments that can only be done here on earth in the land. And Jehovah answers that he will only see it with his eyes, but not cross with his body. And the ache of that answer sits under the entire Torah portion. This is a great leadership quality of Moshe. Moshe didn't kick and scream and holler. I mean, yes, he pleaded. Vaetchanan. Even in the word Vaetchanan, it has the word chen, which means grace. It's fitting then that this Torah portion, which begins with a body that longs to obey, and it cannot, becomes the portion that also contains the Shema of Ve'ahavta. It's the Torah portion of the Tefillin, the phylacteries, that we are commanded to bind the word on our hearts and our minds, that are bound on the arm and set between the eyes, and of the mezuzah that's on every Jewish person's home when they enter. Vayat Khanan is where the Torah teaches us that faith is not an idea that is held in the mind alone. It's worn, it's physically put on, it's put on your doorpost, it's wrapped around your arms, it's bound on your forehead. It is done with your entire body, your limbs, your joints, your flesh, your connective tissue, your ligaments. Moses cannot enter the land in his body. So he gives Israel a way to carry the land within them, in their bodies, in every joint, in every connective tissue, every bone. So I'm going to pick up that thread, the commandments, the body, the bones, the joints, the Shema, the Ve'ahavta, Talit, we're going to talk about that, the Zitzit, briefly. We will move from the counting of the commandments and the quote from the Talmud in Machot, I believe it's 23a and b or 23a, through the source that's called the Or HaChaim, the light, the life of light, the light of life. And we'll also talk from a source, the Ramachal, and also we'll talk about some things by the Aritzal. I don't have time to go into the history of who these people are. Look them up. Very, very easy to look up. The Ramachal, Ramchal, the Makot, Tractate Makot in the Talmud, 23a, and also the Arizal, Arizal. These are new to you. Look those names up. These are Hebraic sources that have been things that have been passed down to these great men of God who wrote commentaries, insights, gave teachings and discourses on the Torah portion every week. We're going to look into the Shema, which is called the wellspring or fountain of faith, out into the fields of Bamidbar, the wilderness, and finally we will talk, which this whole entire teaching, the whole entire Torah, the foundation of all of this is Yeshua, the Mashiach, the Messiah, my Lord, my Rabbi, and the redemption of the body itself. So, let's talk about Rishon, 613, and why the number is a body. Rabbi Simlai taught in Makot 24a, let me correct myself, it's Makot 24a. He said this, that 613 commandments were spoken to Moshe. 365 negative commandments, which is do not, you shall not. They're called Kimyan Yamot HaChochma, like the number of the days of the solar year. So 365 do nots line up with the number of the days of the solar year. And then out of that 613, you have 365, you have 248 left. And 248 positive commandments. They're compared to Keneged Evrav Shel Adam, corresponding to the limbs and joints of man. Rav Hamnua asks for the verse and finds it in the blessing of Moshe. Torah ziva lanu Moshe morasha. Torah did Moshe command us an inheritance. The word Torah in Gematria, which is a numerical value of each letter of the Hebrew language, because every Hebrew letter is a word. It's a word. It's a letter. It's a word. It's also a sound, a shape, a form. It's also the way they number things. And number 1 is Aleph. Number 2 is Bet. Number 3 is Gimel. So the word Torah, with adding up each letter, Tav, Vav, Resh, and He, has a gematria, a numerical value, is 611. And the 2 commands we heard from the mouth of the power, Givorah, directly. This is what they heard at Mount Sinai. Anochi, I am, and lo yihyeh lecha, you shall have no other. This completes the 613. This Torah is 611 commandments that we have heard and read, and the 2 that were spoken at Mount Sinai from God himself is, I am the Lord your God who took you out of the land of Egypt. You shall have no other gods. The rest, through tradition, what tradition says, is the 611, the Torah that Moshe himself taught to all of Israel. Remember when they said, we don't want to hear his voice anymore? You speak to us. Tell us what he's saying. Then it's traditionally believed that Moshe was the one who taught the Torah, the 611 commandments, and the 2 that everyone heard and trembled was Ani, and that I am the God who took you out of the land of Egypt, and you shall have no other. Hold that closing detail, because we will return to it. The whole Torah comes through Moshe, but the root to those 2 individual commandments, the oneness of God and the rejection of having any other God, comes straight from the mouth of Jehovah into the ears of every child of Israel. The number is not flat. It has a center from which it flows. Now, in the Or HaChaim HaKodesh, and it was speaking on the Kol HaMitzvah, the whole commandment, it says in Deuteronomy 8:1, it's commenting on this, it says, Deuteronomy 8:1 gives the teaching its most piercing image. Drawing on the Zohar, he says, the 248 positive commandments answer to the 248 bones of a man. And the 365 negative or do nots, the prohibitions, answer to the 365 sinews, the connective tissues in the body. So you have 248 bones, and to make those bones connect, there's 365 material or things that make the body move. Then comes the parable that no one forgets. A man in pain does not accept comfort from a physician who says 247 of your bones are perfectly fine. Why are you complaining over one? Nobody in pain wants to hear a physician say that. The one that hurts is the one he feels. So it's with the commandments. We cannot take pride in 612 we keep while ignoring the one that we neglect. Because the one is the limb of the self. A limb in pain is the whole man in pain. Missing one and removing one can disturb all the things that you want to do, say, think, speak. And the reason that the Or HaChaim attaches to all of it in this verse's own promise, it says, Iman tichayun, so that you may live. Inheritance of the land itself. When we keep the commandments, we are promised that we get the land. And life itself. These two promises hang on the whole commandment. The negative part and the positive part are together because the commandments are the very structure of the living man. You and I, it's taught that even in this Torah portion, if you obey my commandments, you will have life, and I promise to give you the land. So the whole negative part, the do nots, and the positive commandments, the do's, they play a positive part together. Because the commandments, again, are the very structure and the way we build us as humans. We are alive because of God's commandments. How do we show that we're alive? By doing them. Moving on to the Ramachal, he says it plainly as it can be said in Kalach Pitchei Chochma. It says its essence is in the secret of the 613, which is the entire structure of a human body. Not a rule imposed on the man from the outside. It's the structure of the man himself. And also the Rav Chaim Vital, in a source that he wrote called Shahir HaKavanot, meaning the book on intentions, closes this circuit at the level of vitality. Each of the 248 limbs is nourished from the particular mitzvah that belongs to it. So each of your body's limbs, it's believed, that's what this rabbi is saying, is that every commandment is attached to one of those limbs of your body. And when a person fails to do a certain mitzvah, that limb lacks its nourishment or its food. Neglect is not merely a debt on a ledger. It is a limb that is starving. So what I'm hearing so far is that out of the 613 commandments, we have 365 do nots, the negative, which is not negative if you don't do those things, it's a positive. And we have 248 positive commandments, which is connected or being referred to as the limbs in our body, our bones. And the 365 is also being compared to the solar calendar of 365 days a year. We don't do those things. It's a struggle every day to not do certain things that commands us not to steal, do not lie, do not covet. Those are things we have to practice daily. And the 248 commandments that is being referred to as our body, our bones, and our limbs, it's our structure. That's what holds us up by doing those things. Active, like keeping Shabbat, putting on the mezuzah on your doors of your home, following the dietary laws. These are physical things that you do to keep your body moving. All right, understood? Let's move on. So the 613 are not a burden strapped onto a body. In 1 John chapter 5, verse 3, it says, to love God is to keep his commandments, and they are not a burden. They are the blueprint of the body. According to John, again, that to love God is to keep his commandments. Yeshua said the same thing. If you love me, you will shomer ha-mitzvot. You will keep my commandments. The word keep, shomer, also means to protect. If you love me, you'll protect our love by keeping the commandments. The word mitzvah itself points to also another word, sav, which is the root of mitzvah, which means to connect. So doing, shomer, protecting the connections. The 248 positive commandments are my way of connecting my life, my physical, my spiritual, my mental, my financial. It's how I connect to God. These are our connections. So I protect those connections. Let's talk about the Shema. The Shema as a mekor emunah, the fountain or the wellspring. Another definition of the word mekor is emunah, the wellspring or the fountain of faith. Why does this belong in our Torah portion, Vaetcanan, and to no other portion? Why does this connect so naturally? The answer, because before Israel is ever given the account of the commandments, this portion gives them the root from which all 613 flow. And it gives it as the confession of God's oneness. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Echad. What does that mean? God's oneness is not that he is many things put together. He is everything. Jewish tradition, we pray that 3 times a day. When we wake up in the morning before the sun rises or as the sun is rising, in the middle of the day at 9, 12, and 3 o'clock. And as the sun is going down, we lay it down, actually say it 4 times when we lay our head to sleep. We contemplate and we meditate on Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. God, you are one. I am listening. I am obeying. You are the source of all. You are everything. You're in all. You're outside of all. You created all. You are the one. And there is no other. Twice in the parashah before the Shema, in Deuteronomy chapter 6, Moses drives the point home. He says in Hebrew, Ki Yehovah hu ha-Elohim ein od milvado. For Yehovah, he is God, there is no one else beside him. Deuteronomy 4:35. And again in Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 39, he says, Ein od, there is none, no one else. Then comes the verse Israel has carried on its lips through the exile. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, Jehovah is our God, Jehovah is one. This is what we called, in gathering these sources, the Mechor Emunah, the fountain of faith. The fountain of faith is called in Hebrew Mechor Emunah. We also are going to talk about where we hear this in the New Testament. Every one of the 613 commandments are a stream from that one. And we're going to find out why. The oneness of Jehovah is the fountain. Recall in Machot it says the root to Ani, and then I am the Lord your God who took you out of the land of Egypt. And number 2, there is no other God beside me. Anochi and lo yihye lecha. These are the root 2, heard directly from the mouth of what's called Givora, the power. God is, and there is no other. Everything else, all 611, comes through Moshe, the Torah that we read today. But it comes from that source. Faith is defined as the absolute unity of God. It's not one commandment. It's many. It's all of them. Faith is the one of them all. It is the fountain, the wellspring, the source, and the rest of the Torah is the river. This is why the very next verse is not a further doctrine, but love. It says, Ve'ahavta et Adonai or Yehovah Elohecha bechol levavcha uvchol nefshecha uvchol meodecha. And you shall love Jehovah your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your very much. That's the literal Hebrew. All of your veriness, your very much. All of your very. That's Deuteronomy 6:5. From the source of oneness pours the love that moves the limbs, the body. This is the anatomy of avoda, the service of God. Avoda, we are an oveds. We are people who serve. So the service of God, of avodah, the confession of the mind, echad, becoming the love of the heart, ve'ahavta, becoming the avoda, the deeds of the hands. So, the confession of the mind, thoughts, becoming the love of the heart, speech, because everything comes out of our heart, comes out of our mouth, out of our hearts, and actions. So thoughts, speech, and actions. So the Shema is our confession of our faith in the one God, there is no other, the two commandments that he spoke and all of Israel heard, and they said, stop, we don't want to hear him anymore, or we will die. Moshe gave the Torah, the 611, plus those two spoken from the mouth of God is 613 mitzvot. Out of those 613 mitzvot, we have 365 of those commandments that are do not do, do nots, the negative side. And we have 248 positive. The 365 connects to the 365 days a year that we are not to do those commandments. By not doing those, we are doing them. And which also refers to all the connective tissues in our body, the muscles, the ligaments, the sinews, all of that, 365. And then the 248 commandments are the positive commandments that connect to the bones and limbs or joints in our body. Now we're going to move on to love and awe, the 248 and the 365. Here, there is a Hasidic teaching, which I also teach in the classes that we have now. We just started on Erev Shabbat, the Hebrew Roots commentary or Messianic commentary, however you want to call it. I'm titling it the Hebrew Roots commentary or teachings or lessons on the Tanya. So here the Hasidic teaching in the book of the Tanya opens the number from within, the 365, the 248, together being the 613. The Tanya opens up and brings that number within. The Alter Rebbe, who is Rabbi Shneur Zalman, who wrote the Tanya, the first Rebbe of the Hasidic movement in the 1700s, published his book, the Tanya, around 1796. He takes the 613 commandments and internalizes that number, the 248 and the 365. And he says, the Alter Rebbe teaches that the 248 positive commandments are rooted in Ahava, love. And the 365 prohibitions are rooted in Yira, awe, the fear of turning away, the fear of turning away from God. Love is turning towards God. Fear is that awe and respect of I don't want to turn away from God. So the 248 positive commandments are love that draws us to Yehovah by doing them, by doing the Shabbat. When you do the commandments, they draw you, they connect you to Yehovah. And the ones you stay away from are the ones that can pull you away from God. So you have love and awe. Ahava, Yira, love and fear, or love and awe. Not fear of punishment, fear of being pulled away, of drawing away from God. So you have 365 that if you do them, they will pull you away from God. And you have 248 that will pull you towards God, connect, devechut, cling to God. Love reaches out, the limbs do. They build, they bind, and they give. Awe holds back, the sinews. They restrain, they refuse to bend your whole joint in the opposite direction. We have them there to restrain. They refuse. They guard the soul from the blockage that dims the light. So, in Vayat Khanan itself hands us both hands of this. It says, Ve'havta bechol levavcha, love with all your heart. The whole positive Torah in one phrase. The 248 bones reaching toward their God. But turn to the third paragraph that Israel joins to the Shema every single day. And you find the other hand coming from Bamidbar, the wilderness, and it is our bridge to the fields. So Ve'avta itself hands us both the hands of this. Ve'ahavta bechol levavcha, love with all your heart, the whole positive Torah in the phrase, and the 248 bones reaching toward their God, one hand, but turn to the third paragraph that Israel joins to the Shema every single day, and you find the other hand, it comes from the wilderness, and it's our bridge into the fields. The bridge to Bamidbar, which is the Zitzit on the body. So you have one hand, Ve'ahavta bechol levavcha, love with all your heart, and sometimes we hold the Zitzit in on our other hand. So in Bamidbar, the book of Numbers, Yehovah commands the Zitzit, the fringes. They're on the four corners of a garment, and there are some spiritual implications on this also. And it says in Numbers chapter 15, verse 39, and it shall be for you as a fringe, a Zitzit, that you may look upon it and remember all the mitzvot, the commandments of Yehovah, and do them, and not go after your own heart and after your own eyes. Two things stand together in this one verse, and they are our 248 and our 365. Two things. You shall remember all 613 commandments and do them. That is the positive reach of love. And you shall not go after your heart and after your eyes. Velo taturu acharei levavchim ve'acharei einechem. That is the awe that restrains. On the heart and on the eyes. The commandments land on the heart and on the eyes. The very organs of Vaetchanan's Ve'ahavta and the tefillin between the eyes. The love binds the heart to God. The fringes guard the heart from wandering away. One body, two hands. The sages read the fringe itself as the whole count. Zitzit. In Gematria, 600 the word Zitzit in Gematria is 600. The 8 strands and the 5 knots of each corner. And the number is 613. So the entire Torah worn on the 4 corners of the garment that covers the body, called the talit or prayer shawl, this is what the Or HaChaim teaches, made wearable. So now the Torah and its 613 commandments are something you can put on like a garment. And it covers the body. This is a great teaching. The 613 are the structure of the human. So the man wraps that structure around himself in a garment and carries it into the open field, into the market, into the tent. And it is no accident that Israel appends this passage from Bamidbar to the Shema of Vaetchanan every morning and every evening. When we pray the Shema, right after that we say the commandment of the Zitzit. Every morning when we put on a talit, we say a blessing over the Zitzit. When we put our little talit katans on, we say a blessing for the Zitzit. We have the love of God when we say the Shema, Ve'ahavta ulevecha, you shall love the Lord with all your heart. You also, which is the internal love of God, and then the external of actions that show our love for God, so that we can put blockers between our eyes and our hearts, so that we have the Zitzit to remind us that we are to serve God with our entire being. This is the structure of man, building our relationship through the commandments of God that keeps us alive and gives us our inheritance. And it's no accident that Israel takes this passage from Bamidbar to the Shema of Vayat Khanan every morning and every evening. The wilderness, Zitzit, completes the confession of the land, Echad on the lips and love in the heart. The whole Torah is on the hem of the garment. Makes you wonder that the woman who had the issue of blood for 12 years, now, what was she reaching for? She knew that these zitziot, this prayer shawl was not just any prayer shawl. It was the Creator wrapped in glory, the perfect commandments, reaching, knowing He's the Mashiach, grabbing just the zitzit. What was she really grabbing? She was grabbing on to the Torah, wrapped around the Creator. The light that shines brighter than any light you could ever see with your human eyes. Reaching for, because she knew within that was power. Anochi, I am the Lord that brought you out of Egypt. You shall have no other besides me. She was reaching for that. That was her emunah, her faith, knowing that if this is the Mashiach, I will receive the Creator's power that formed me, and I will be made well. Let's hold on a second for the scene from Bamidbar, because it carries us straight into the Iman Tachiyun, so that you may live. And it takes us straight to our Mashiach, Yeshua. We're going to look at the serpent that was lifted in the desert when Israel was being bit by the venomous snakes, and Moses made a brass snake and he put it on a pole and he lifted it up. Look, and the look that gives life. You have to forgive me, my glasses, I'm adjusting to these things, and I'll look at the wrong direction and everything gets blurry, and then I'll say things, I'll miss anything, so please forgive me for that. So in Numbers chapter 21, the people speak against God and against Moshe. The fiery serpents come and many people die. The remedy that Jehovah gives is strange, but it's exact. Moshe makes a serpent of bronze, lifts it on a pole, and here's what we say in Hebrew: V'hayachol hanashuch v'ra'a oto v'chai. And it shall be that everyone who is bitten, he who looks upon it will live. That comes from Numbers chapter 21, verse 8. Look and live. Not a potion that's swallowed, not a limb that's amputated because it has venom in it. It's a look of trust. And the venom loses its vitality. It loses its claim. It cannot do anything. When the look of trust is made, the poison subsides. The Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah, the portion of Rosh Hashanah, already asks the obvious question and answers it. Could a bronze serpent kill or keep alive? Rather, when Israel turned their eyes upward and subjected their hearts to their Father in heaven, they were immediately healed. The look was emunah, faith, trust. The healing was chaim, life. The look was trust, emunah. The healing after the look was chaim, life. The look gave life. The look of life. This is the mechar emunah in a single gesture of the eyes, the fountain of faith by just one look. And it lands on the same word, the Vayat Khanan and Devarim 8. Tichyun, that you may live. Tichyun means that you may live. And it's precisely this scene that Yeshua takes up as the picture of his own elevation when he was lifted up. We read in Yochanan, John chapter 3, verses 14 and verse 15. It says, quote, "And Moshe lifted up the serpent in the wilderness. So must the Ben Adam, the Son of Man, be lifted up, that everyone who trusts in him may have eternal life." The venom of the wilderness is the death that entered the world. The look of trust is faith. The life is the life of the world to come. The wilderness remedy from Bamidbar and the Vayat Khanan promise meet at the same place. Look and live. Lema'an techeyun. Now we can stand where a certain scribe stood. And in Mark chapter 12, a sofer, a scribe, asks Yeshua, which is the first of all the commandments? The very question that Rabbi Similai's 613 out of all of them, which is the rosh, which is the head, which is the most important, that the scribe asks Yeshua in Mark chapter 12. Yeshua answers by reciting Vaetchanan. The first is Shema. Israel, Yehovah, Eloheinu, Yehovah, Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And you, Ve'ahavta, you shall love Yehovah your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all of your strength. The second is this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these. Mark 12, 29 through 31, joining Deuteronomy, Devarim 6, verses 4 through 5, with Leviticus, Vayikra 19, 18. Notice what Yeshua does not do. He does not choose one mitzvah from among the 613 and sets the others aside. He names Mechor Emunah, the fountain of faith. The most important, the Rosh, the most important commandment. He names the one, the fountain of faith, Mechor Emunah, and he returns the scribe the wellspring, Yehovah Echad, from which all the commandments flow, and then he shows that the love which pours from that spring runs into the channels all at once, toward God and toward the neighbor. Everything we do must be pointing towards God and to our neighbor. When we receive the love from God by obeying his mitzvot, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. He also says in 1 John that I loved you because, I can't say it right. We love him because he first loved us. The only way we can give that love and do his commandments is because he's poured his love into us. The part that's difficult for us as humans is we have to uncover that love that's inside of us. It gets calloused over from negativity. It gets calloused over from anger, rage, stuff that's not been dealt with. God's love is in you, and it's in you so that you can give, not keep. But when we do those things that we shouldn't do, have those thoughts and give in to those temptations and those fantasies, we cover God's love and it's subdued. It can't move. The only way to release that love, if you love me, you'll shomer hamitzvot. You'll keep my commandments. The scribe agrees, and Yeshua tells him that he is not far from Malchut Elohim. He's not far from the kingdom. What gets someone into the kingdom? By loving God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and loving your neighbor as yourself. Not far, because he has understood that the whole Torah is one living body reaching out of the source. This is exactly what the source that we've been reading, Or HaChaim, points. Spoken in the language of the good news, the gospel. You cannot keep 612 and comfort yourself that one's missing. Because the commandments are limbs of a single body, and that body has one heart, and that heart has one confession, echad. When we make the faith and the declaration of our faith, which is Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, we have taken on the yoke of the kingdom of Elohim, the kingdom of God. That is now our responsibility to live as kingdom citizens by making that declaration. You are my God who took me out of Egypt. There is no one beside you. That is our mechor emunah, our fountain of faith. This is exactly what that Or HaChaim, the source that we've been reading, points to. Here in Rav Chaim Vital's teaching, another source, each limb is fed by its own commandment. So every limb of your body has its own particular, your finger joint has its own mitzvah. I don't know which one it is, but if your finger starts hurting and then you do the commandment and it starts hurting and you do a commandment and it stops hurting, maybe that's the mitzvah. I don't know. Don't listen to me. I'm just thinking. Each limb of our body is fed by its own mitzvah, its own commandment. It opens on to Paul in a way that will reward what he said in Romans. Paul was a Pharisee. He was one of the most brilliant minds of the first century. I think today, if Paul did not have his road to Damascus experience with Yeshua, we would be reading about Rav Shaul or the great Rebbe Shaul in the Talmud. Probably. What a brilliant mind he was. Maybe one day we'll talk about why Yeshua chose Paul. Kind of fascinating if you contemplate on that. If Yeshua was so against the Pharisees and didn't want their teachings to be heard or understood, then why would he convert one of them into one of the greatest authors of our faith? Besides the great author of our faith is Yeshua, but one of the authors of how we should live and live for the Messiah, a man who never seen the Messiah in physical flesh, never once quoted the Gospels, but he wrote a third of the entire New Testament. Think about that for a moment. Why would he choose a rabbi or a Pharisee of all the people that stood with him, ate with him, broke bread with him? He chose one that was completely against him. Let that sink in for a little bit. Paul was a Pharisee trained at the feet of Gamliel, one of the greatest sages of his time. The body and limbs that we are talking about, Paul talks about this, present your members, the body, as an instrument of tzedakah, righteousness and charity. Paul was a Pharisee trained at the feet of Gamliel. The body and limbs, Torah, was his native tongue. When Paul thought about God, he mulled over the Tanakh, the Torah, the prophets, and the writings, and every Hebrew letter. When he was thinking about body and limbs and connections, his mind went to Torah. That's what he spoke. That's what he taught. That's how he proved Yeshua was the Messiah. That's how he allowed people to feel the indwelling and witness the indwelling of the Ruach HaKodesh, the Spirit of God. Paul spoke the Tanakh. And when he writes to Rome, in the book of Romans, one of his greatest writings, he does not speak of the commandments as abstractions. He speaks of the commandments as members of a body. He says, do not present your members to sin as instruments of unrighteousness, but present yourselves to God as those alive or awake from the dead, and your members to God, your body parts, your limbs, your 248 positive commandments to God as instruments of tzadikah, righteousness. Members in the Greek text is mele, the limbs. This is the 248 and the 365 in the mouth of Paul. With our understanding of the 613 commandments being the total body of our human body, read this into the text. Let's paraphrase the text, or in parentheses, present the commandments that you do to show your love for God. Present those. Do not present the commandments as ways of sinning. Don't do them as instruments of unrighteousness, but present yourselves to God as those that are awake from the dead, and your commandments to God are your instruments of righteousness. Your body are the mitzvot. And he is asking us that we stop using our bodies and our members and our actions as tools of unrighteousness, but use our bodies as tools in the service of Elohim by doing the mitzvot, the 365 do nots and the 248 do's. Each limb is an instrument. Each can be divided to sin, or it can be handed to God. It's really up to you. Each limb is fed. It's fed by the mitzvah that it belongs to, or the commandment that it belongs to it. Or starved, or depleted by starving it by neglecting the Torah. Your body responds to serving God, positive or negative. Paul gathers the whole of it into one offering. He says in Romans 12, verse 1, I appeal to you, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies, physical bodies, a living sacrifice, olah, holy, kadosh, pleasing to God, which is your reasonable service. Avodah, service, offered with the body itself, the living korban, the living offering, and then, so that no one thinks a single limb may be withheld, he gives the image of the one body with many members. For as in one body, we have many members, and the members do not all have the same function. So we, though many, are one body. Romans 12, verses 4 through 5. And at greater length, the body is one and has many members. And all the members of the body, though many, are one, echad, body. 1 Corinthians 12:12. And when one member suffers, all suffer together. 1 Corinthians 12, verse 26. This is what the Or HaChaim was saying about that aching bone. That one, he had 612 commandments, and one was sick and ill or broken. It was pain, causing pain. When one suffers, we all suffer. No limb is spared. No limb is silent. The pain of one is the pain of all. And now in the Mechor Emunah itself, Romans 1, Paul says he is not ashamed of the good news, for it is the Gevurah, which we talked about in the beginning, the power of God. And in the power of God, he said, Anochi, and I am the Lord your God who took you out of Egypt. And the power, the Gevurah of God said, there's no other beside me. For in the righteousness of God is revealed from the fountain of faith. Now, you don't have that in your English Bibles, but in the Salkinson's Ginsburg Hebrew New Testament translation, he understood the Greek text when he was translating it from, and Romans was the first book that he translated into Hebrew, which I find fascinating, because he makes so many connections by using the Greek and turning it towards as if a Jewish person who knew the Tanakh was reading the New Testament and was trying to understand it from a Hebrew perspective. So now he did not add to or take away. He used the best word from the Greek language that fit his mind, the way Paul was talking in context, to fit that particular text, if I'm making sense. So the Mechor Emunah is used in Romans chapter 1 in verses 16 and 17. He uses that word Mechor Emunah. He also uses that same term Mechor HaTorah in another place in Romans. So there's two fountains. There's the fountain of faith and the fountain of Torah, and none of them are against each other. You have to have one, and you can't have one without the other. That's pretty much explaining the entire book of Romans. Mechor Emunah, Mechor HaTorah. Those two together create a river that breaks out into our bodies and into our limbs and gives us how we function as humans in the service, the avodah of God, and how we function and serve one another, to love God and to love our neighbor. The closing line in in Habakkuk 2 verse 4, the closing line of Romans chapter 1 verses 16 and 17, it says, "For in the righteousness of God is revealed, ek pistos is pistin," from faith to faith. It actually says from the fountain of faith, Mechor ha'amunah, as it is written, the righteous man lives by faith. In Habakkuk 2:4, it says, "Zadik bahamunato yichiyeh," and the righteous, by his faith a man shall live. Hear how the whole chain locks together now. If our bodies are made alive by the commandments, and we shall live by our faith is expressed by keeping the commandments. Not our faith is expressed by confession. Confession is the beginning that you get the ability to observe. Many stop at the confession and never act. Then you have to, wonder why you have all those questions of I'm being blessed, but I really don't feel like I go to church every Sunday and I feel that fire burning in me, but then it goes away. And then people start feeling depressed, like God doesn't love them anymore if they don't get that fiery, burning love that they feel when they're singing songs or hearing a good word from their pastors. They feel that maybe they have lost their connection with God, and that's false. There's levels of love. There's love that you feel, and then there's love that you think. Commandments protect our Ahava. The commandments protect our Yira. One pulls us towards God, and one, the awe of God keeps you from being pulled away. Love of God, love me, you'll keep my connections, my commandments, my mitzvot. And those commandments are our entire bodies, our bones, our joints. And we, as members of a huge body, all have our functions so that we can get along and work together in this life of serving, avodah, Elohim, serving God. Hear how the whole chain locks together. Vaetchanan promised Imam Tichayun, that you may live. If you keep the commandments, you will live. The bronze serpent taught Vera Ota V'chai, look and live. Habakkuk says, the righteous man lives by his emunah, his faith. Paul says, the good news reveals a righteousness from the fountain of faith. The doubling of Paul's phrase from faith to faith even echoes the doubling of the Shema, Yehovah, Yehovah. Yehovah Eloheinu, Yehovah Echad. Faith in Yehovah, faith in Yehovah. That's a source and an overflowing from the source. The wellspring or the fountain is the oneness of God. The river is a life lived by faith, and the riverbed is the body and the 613 members, each one an instrument of righteousness. Each one fed by the commandments and the portion that it needs to live. I don't know about you, God is doing something good here. Emunah, faith, is not the abolition of the limbs. It's the source that gives life to each and every part of your body. It's the source. The commandments give you the source of getting new thoughts. Do not be conformed of the ways of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. The Torah and its commandments feed what you think if you study it. And they also fill your heart once you contemplate on each of the commandments. They fill your heart with what to say. You will speak the commandments. When you speak them, your feet begin to move in them. So where does this body go? The garments of the soul and the final redemption. Where does this body go? Vaetchanan will not let us forget that the promise is life and inheritance. Vaetchanan, this week's Torah portion, was about receiving that life by obeying and the inheritance that God promises. And the sages saw that the promise reaches past this age. Another rabbi called Rav Yechiel Machel Tukansky teaches in Gesher HaChaim, the source that he wrote, that the soul is clothed in this world in the 613 parts of the body. And that shedding the body at death, when the soul and the body disconnect, shedding the body at death is merely a change of clothes. It's like taking off a coat and hanging it in the closet. The soul is now, the body's removed, and now the soul has to put on new clothes. From the course of material garment to the refined spiritual garment, you take off one robe, the material robe, to put on a spiritual robe, which itself has 248 members, and the 365 sinews answering to the 248 positive and 365 negative commandments. The mitzvot done in this world become the very garment that the soul wears in the world to come. So tradition states that when you die, you can no longer obey God's commandments. That's why it's so important that in this life we obey. Yeshua said, love me, you'll keep my commandments. We read in the Torah, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. To love God is to keep his commandments, and they are not difficult. They are not in heaven where you have to send someone up and bring them down. They are in your mouth and in your heart so that you can do them. This is the Tanya's teaching that I talk about in my book coming out in September, the commentary, the Hebrew roots, lessons and commentary in the Tanya. The 613 clothe the soul in God's divine, all-eternal light. They call it Ein Sof. The positive commands feeding the spiritual limbs with life, giving it motion and movement. The negative commands guarding them from blockage that would hide the light. Because if you do the do-nots, if you don't steal, if you don't lie, if you don't covet, or don't kidnap, as I should say, it blocks those opportunities for the unholy things to come into your life. When you don't do those things, it means you're treating people with respect. You're treating the community with respect. So that's allowing God's light to shine through you. So now the love of God can go through you. But if you're constantly disobeying the commands, the 365 negative commandments, that also controls your thoughts, your speech, and your actions. It's going to limit that light that shines. It's going to cover it over. It's going to hide it. It's going to put garments over it. The garments of the other side, the side of unholiness, also has the three garments of thought, speech, and action. And the good side, the side of holiness, the three garments are thought, speech, and action. So whatever side you're on, you're going to think like them, you're going to speak like them, and you're going to act. Whatever side you allow into your life is going to be evident in your thinking, your speech, and the way you act. That's why they are called the garments of the soul. Are you entertaining your worldly desires and your flesh too much? It will show. Are you entertaining the holiness and living for God studying his Torah, doing the commandments that you can, the one God gives you one, if you do one, he'll give you another one, but done in love, it will show in your thoughts, speech, and action. Now, stand this beside everything that we've talked about up to this moment. The body, our bodies are the vessels of God's commandments. Every part of our body has a commandment connected to it somehow, some way. Our bones being the 248 commandments that sustain us. Bones are called etzem, literally the same word for etz, tree, which is a structure that can hold or frame, hold up. So the bones, the 248 commandments, hold up everything else. And the 365 sinews, the ligaments, the muscles, the nerves, all of that stuff is contained in the 365. We block the side of unholiness from, influencing our thoughts, our speech, and our action. And we want to constantly influence the godly side of our walk, and by studying the Torah and feeding that to influence our thoughts, speech, and action. Now let's stand this, everything we've said, to the vision of the dry bones in Ezekiel 37. The prophet is set down in a valley of bones, very many and very dry, and ask, can these etzim bones live? When he said that, the sinews came upon them, the flesh, the skin, and the breath. And they stood up on their feet, a very great army. Ezekiel 37, 7 through 10. The sinews and the bones, the same anatomy that the Or HaChaim that we talked about in the beginning of the teaching, mapped to the 365 and the 248. The final redemption is not the escape of the soul from the body. It's the body that's raised and elevated and revived, re-sinewed, re-breathed, reclothed in the light of every commandment that it ever did. And you may live, tichayun, that you may live, reaches its fullness in the resurrection, when the structure of the man that the Torah drew is raised and is now incorruptible. This is the hope of Yeshua, sealed when he was lifted up like a serpent, so that the look of faith would give not only healing in the wilderness, but chai olam, eternal life. The whole ark bends here. Echad, confessed, Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta, obeyed, love the Lord your God with all your heart. The members presented the righteous living by faith, and at the last, the bones finally standing up in a valley to receive the garment woven from a lifetime of the whole commandment and the journey that you've been on your whole life, that moment when God puts us all back together, called the resurrection from the dead. Avodah, carrying the whole commandment in the body. So the parasha that began with Moses pleading to enter the land in his body ends by teaching us how to carry the land in our body. The avodah, the service of Vayat Khanan, is this: do not treat your obedience as a ledger with a comfortable balance, like I did enough commandments today, I'm good, check, check, check. It's not a checklist, folks. Treat it as a body. When you find the mitzvah that you've been neglecting, don't say, look how many I keep. Say, this is the limb that aches. This is the one that's hurting. This is why I'm not. You fill the blank. This is the limb that aches, and tend to it. For a starved limb starves the whole man. Bind the love to your heart and the guard upon your eyes. Both hands of the one Shema with the Zitzit to protect your heart and eyes, and the Shema binding God to your faith. And let all of it rise from the one source, Yehovah Echad, the Mechor Amunah. God is one, the fountain of faith, the fountain from which the righteous drink and live. We said this before. Torah tziva lanu Moshe morasha. Moshe could not cross over, so he gave us the morasha, the inheritance. Moshe couldn't go, but he gave us the inheritance. 613 limbs of a single body, one confession, one love, one life. And the one who was lifted up in the Bamidbar in the wilderness, the one who was lifted up outside the gates of the city, gives us to carry, not as a weight, but as a garment. Put on Yeshua as a garment, woven now in this world to be worn in the world that is coming. L'chaim.